With the Summer Olympics in full swing, and with Erik off at a podcasting conference, Roshan and Adrian take up a lighter topic: Olympic athletes and how much they earn. The differences in earnings are wide, but Roshan and Adrian explore what financial advice they'd offer someone making $100,000 a year, whether an Olympic athlete or not. Stay tuned for all that and more right now on the Retirement Lifestyle Show.
Welcome to the Retirement Lifestyle Show. I am your co-host, Roshan Loungani, here with Adrian Nicholson. Today, we are doing this one without Erik. He tried to join from his hotel room at a podcast conference, but the internet didn't work. So, Adrian, how do you feel? We can have a crazy episode without Erik holding us back and making us color between the lines today.
I like that. I like that response, Roshan. I kind of wish I was at that podcast conference too with Erik. I feel like my biggest thing is like how important are setups, like your setup for like your podcast and everything, because that's like it's super big now. Like streamers, podcasters, like YouTubers, like their intro to their video, and you just see all this like cool stuff in the background. They have like all this like their microphones or headphones, just like cool designs and everything. Like in 10 years from now, I want to have like the perfect like setup, whatever it is. That's like something I'm really looking forward to.
Yes, it would be pretty cool. And I'm sure there are ways to do it remote, but I guess we weren't ready for that one. We thought the hotel internet would work, but it just didn't. Let me take us right into our topic for today. Actually, before we jump into that, we have an announcement, Adrian. I'll let you share it with the listeners.
Yeah, it's really really excited. We finally have our website up right now, the Retirement Lifestyle Show. Roshan, can you pull up the URL for our listeners? It's really excited that we finally got this up and going right now to share all of our content. It's really awesome, and we're really excited about it.
Yeah, it's called the website is retirementlifestyleshow.com, and I'm trying to share it with you for those of you watching on YouTube, and I've got it up and running right now, although it is showing me. There we go. This should be clear. How does that look, Adrian?
Yeah, I mean, it looks awesome. We got like our videos up there, all of like our podcasts, like our info. It's I'm really happy with how it turned out. We got all of our memes up there and everything, and it's looking really awesome. And I'm excited too, because I think it's going to be sometime in September where we'll hit like our 100th podcast. So we have like the website too. So you mentioned it. We have to have some type of big party for it.
Yeah, we should definitely do something. We've got the YouTube stuff at the top, and if you just want audio, we've got the podcast only there. I think we are more excited than most people would be to have a website up, because you would think it happens pretty quickly. But in our case, just having to get through compliance and regulators and so on, I think we started this whole thing, and the design piece too. Mm-hmm. But I think we started the whole thing in October, and here we are in August. So it took 10 months to actually make this thing happen.
Yeah, and it's really awesome. Are you still on the website? Like you can hover over our pictures too, and it gives us like little like bios and description. And I'm pretty sure my description might be a good lead into this episode today.
All right, well, let me share this screen again, and you can tell us what you're referring to. Here we go.
I think it's got to be the first paragraph. I can't really pull it up right now, but I think it's going to be a good lead into our episode today. I'm really excited for it.
Oh, yeah. That says, during his time at the university, he established an annual basketball fundraiser to support the Special Olympics.
Yeah, and our topic today, do you want to just give that too?
Yeah, today we have a topic that I think will be pretty interesting for everyone. I know we've got the Olympics going on right now, so we're going to talk about some of the Olympic athletes using our retirement lifestyle and finance focus. We're going to talk about the money, you know, what they make, what they do, and then we will have some suggestions for some of the athletes in terms of what they can do with their winnings. So when I first looked into this, I found this interesting. And Adrian, if you have the number memorized, I guess I'm going to ask you in case you don't have it memorized, but do you remember the country that pays the most money for a gold medal?
For some reason, off the top of my head, I'll just guess with the U.S., but I think I'll just go with the U.S., but I don't think that's right.
No, yeah, actually, Singapore pays 737,000 for a gold medal. They also pay a lot for a silver and the bronze. And the first thing I did then was say, okay, well, how many medals do they have if they're willing to pay this much? And the answer is zero. So they're willing. So I can see why it's worth that much more to them. When they don't have the medals. I guess on one side you could say, well, they're not paying anything because they don't have them, so they can all. Or you can say the value's that high. Now, for the United States, the equivalent for a gold medal for this Olympics, the Tokyo Olympics, is $37,500.
Yeah,
so
that sounds about right. And I always love those stories where you hear like that. Like when they're all coming out, like you see all like the athletes, and then you see like one country, it's just like a few athletes, and then you hear one of them like winning like a bronze or silver medal or something, and they're the only ones that won a medal for their country, and it's just like a big celebration. Those stories were always so awesome to like hear about and just watch. But I got to be honest, Roshan, I haven't been watching the Olympics that much this year. Have you?
You know what? I have. Cumulative watch less than 5 minutes, I think.
Wow, and it's shocking to me because I used to be obsessed with like the Olympics, like growing up and just watching it, and even in high school and college, I was always like keeping up with it. It was great, but like now I blame it on I just don't even have cable television. I just have streaming services, so that's kind of like my excuse why I haven't kept up with it. But I'll watch some like highlights or see some stuff on social media, like really cool like things that happen or like a really good moment or something. So I have been keeping up with it, but I haven't been, watching like I used to do. But I'm sure when the basketball games get competitive, I'm going to be watching those. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. What's interesting is they have gotten to that point, right? Because we are in the semis now, and I can't remember who Team USA is playing, but I was going to blame it on the time. Like Team USA played Spain and won. I think it was 2 nights ago, but the game started right around 1 a.m.
That's prime time for the people overseas, but for us, yeah, that's unless you're like a diehard fan on like both ends or it's like a really big game. Like that time is really hard for me to watch that game, honestly.
Yeah, and Team USA has had a tough go of it, so I have an interest to watch it. It's just the time, and I believe we're going to play Australia next, and I'm looking up the time, but I think it's either tonight or tomorrow night, but it's a similar start time. It's right after midnight, I think.
Yeah, those times are always hard to keep up with, but yeah, I'll definitely be watching those big games. But and I'm really excited about this topic. I'll hit you with a question I think that would be really interesting that can kind of getting us into it. What would you say the average age of the Olympic athlete would be if you took them all? What would be the average age?
23.
You might be right. My data might be a little bit old, but I got around like 26. So okay. I think this is a really interesting concept because it kind of shows that it leans more towards younger athletes in their 20s. And I found this really interesting, this concept of, which is really important in finance, is your peak income years. And what my research shows is what age do you think people really hit their peak income year? You probably know this probably off the top of your head.
50s.
50s.
In their 50s, yeah.
50s. And then you have these Olympic athletes who are in their 20s, like you said, with those, like from all these different countries, just winning medals and making all this money. So they're hitting their peak income years, would you say, kind of early on in their life? Does that sound about right?
Well, I guess it would, but the numbers that we have too, talking about how the majority of these athletes don't actually make very much.
Yeah, that was also really surprising. I guess if you combine them all, yeah, there's some, but there are some that are probably making just like a lot of money. So yeah, there is definitely a give and take there. But I thought that was really interesting, where like some of them are doing like crowdsourcing, like fundraisers, just trying to generate enough money to even just get themselves to the Olympics just to compete. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, well, and the a number I saw was that half of the U.S. track and field athletes in the top 10 make less than 15,000 a year.
Yeah, that's incredible.
So you've got to have some kind of other job going on in order to do this. I mean, a lot of these, if you're, I don't think I could name 5 U.S. track athletes right now, right? So if you're in that that was saying half in the top 10, I would assume that'd be the bottom 5, but you don't know that for sure, make 15,000 annually. So you would just think, well, there's got to be some kind of other job they have, right, in order to make this kind of money.
Yeah,
that's definitely to live off of more money. Yeah,
but I was just really interested in some of those stories where just like these young people, they're competing for their country and they do really well. They get these endorsements, sponsorships, their followers just take off on like social media, and they're really just like raking in like a lot of money at such a young age. I always find that like really interesting, where you're kind of like new to this like investing in finance space, and you have all this money coming in because you're performing so well. And like the question is like, what do you do with it? Like, how do you respond? I think that's like a really pivotal moment for some of these athletes making like good, sound financial decisions, because not only are they getting a lot of money, but they're also in like their prime, like fitness, being able to compete. And it's hard for these athletes just to compete for like 10, 20 years. So it's really striking when the iron's hot, really just making sure that you're competing, you're performing well, and you're also being as financially like responsible, I think is really important. And basically these 5 tips that I found, which will be like really useful, is if these Olympic athletes are getting a lot of money at this really young age, around their 20s, the 6 things that came up that they should focus on or really look at. Number 1 is funding their retirement, like contributing to certain accounts. That was like the biggest one that came up. Saving for college, I think that's huge. I'm sure there's a lot of these athletes that are gonna go to the Olympics, try and perform their best, and whatever money they do get to, maybe they either put it back into training or college education. So that just having that money set aside to help them with their career and on, I think that's really important. The third
hold on. Let's go through one of them at a time. Let's start. Go back. Perfect. Your first one was retirement planning, and that was on my list as well. We had talked about, and this is the part where I think it can relate to everybody, right? In terms of, we had said, okay, let's look at the number, and we picked the number of $100,000 annual income if you're an Olympic athlete, and that number, by the way, comes from the top 10 runners in the world can earn about that much. About 100,000. So if you've got 100,000 in income, and you know what, actually, before we even go on the $100,000 number, the other thing that I would point out when I use that 15,000 annual salary for people making less is they're going to have to get another job, right? I mean, that's sort of the bottom line. If there's not enough there to live off of and save and so on. And a lot of athletes do have another job. That's why we picked the $100,000 number. So you've got an athlete earning $100,000, and we were going to share some tips for them. Your first tip of saving for retirement is the same thing that I had in mind, for a couple reasons. One is, especially if you're at that young age and this is your peak earning years, you've got to put money aside. In addition to that, though, if you're one of these few athletes that are earning millions of dollars, the tax benefit can really help as well. So you've got to look at both the tax savings and the fact that your peak earning years are sort of the reverse of what's typical. So you may be 24 and thinking, I don't need to save for retirement because I'm so young, whereas yes, but your income is likely to go down versus going up in the future. There are definitely athletes where it goes the other direction, where they earn a lot and they keep going that way. But I can't imagine. There's been a lot of talk about Simone Biles If you look up what her net worth is online, I've seen things ranging from $2 to $5 million. She's got sponsorships from Nike and Hershey, Kellogg, just to name a few. And there's just been a lot of talk with her pulling out, not feeling, having the twisties was what they were saying she had during the Olympics and not being able to compete. So there's just been a lot of talk about her. She's young. She's making a lot of money. She's in that smaller group. But someone like that, I don't know. I don't think she can continue making this much money, at least through gymnastics, right?
Yeah,
She's going to have to do something. And the gymnast career, I think she's on the older end. I know there was some person competing at the age of 40, but the gymnasts tend to be younger.
Yeah, I've always heard about that. Just the way they have to like compete and like the routines they do. I generally see that it falls on the younger end, tend to be like the better performer, and then over time it just like kind of like a curve, it just goes down. I definitely seen that a lot. I mean, yeah, that's definitely a big thing.
Yeah, I just looked it up. It said the average age for this Olympics for female gymnasts are under 22, which makes the 24-year-old Simone Biles old compared to right. That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
For her age, especially if you think she's got the Olympics 4 years down the road. So your first tip of saving for retirement, that would definitely be my first tip as well, for the reasons I just mentioned. One, you get the tax benefit. Two, your peak earning years are sort of reversed. So you've got to start saving for retirement now, because it's very possible your earnings go down versus going up, which is atypical. And for those of you listening that are not Olympic athletes and are on the regular trajectory where your income goes up every year, using that 100,000 income level, same thing goes for you. Save for retirement. Now, what's different is if you are your employer likely has a retirement plan where you can take advantage of the match. And as you've probably heard before, that's free money. So make sure, if you are employed and you've got a 401k plan, a 403b, or if you're with the federal government and it's called the TSP, and you've got a match, make sure you take advantage of that, Olympic athlete or not. The Olympic athletes likely will have to set up their own plan, so there won't be a match.
Yeah, exactly. All great points. And just the second point, we can just go over that real quickly. The one, it's just saving for college, whether it's the Olympic athlete saving for their own, or it might be an older Olympic athlete just trying to make earn a few extra dollars to save for their grandchildren or some other beneficiary in their life. I think was a pretty interesting tip. Yeah,
Adrian, I need you to find me an Olympic athlete with grandchildren.
Yeah, I mean, depending on the sport, I saw, I think there was like an older one. He was like an archer, and he was like in his 50s or 60s or something. So it ranges. I mean, Olympic athletes, they come in all shapes, sizes, and age ranges. So it could be possible. But whether it's a beneficiary, a child, a grandchild, whatever it may be, it's just a solid tip when you're just earning a lot of income in those peak years.
Yeah, well, I want to know a grandchild or a grandparent in the Olympics to see if I still have hopes of making the Olympics myself.
Are you able? Yeah, exactly. But
I don't have grandkids, but I figure I'll need like 10 or 20 years worth of training to get there.
Exactly. And then we can move on to the next one. The next one's just reevaluate your investments.
Hold on, I want to come back to that first. If you are an Olympic athlete or not, using that same 100,000 number and income we talked about, for kids or grandkids, your states will likely have a 529 plan. That 529 plan will likely have may have a state tax deduction. If it doesn't have a state tax deduction, it does grow tax deferred, and you can take the money out tax free. So there is definitely an opportunity there. We did an episode focused on education planning. I'll see if I can find the episode number. It's episode number RL051. So it's 51 on education planning. So if you want to take a deep dive on there, I'd say go check out that episode. But that's another one I had on my list. Now, I had it if you had children, But if you are also an Olympic athlete that's making 100,000, but and you want to go back to school, let's say you're a younger athlete and you don't think there'll be a scholarship or anything like that available, you can save in that kind of plan for yourself as well. So you may get a tax deduction today, you may not, but it will grow for you tax deferred, and you can take it out tax free for education.
Yeah, those are.
Oh, and
those
I'm
are
sorry,
all
one
good
last
points.
point. You can pass it on to anybody. So you can set it up for yourself. If you do get that scholarship, you can leave it in that account. And if you don't have children now and you have them in the future, you can make them the beneficiary later.
Yeah, I think the flexibility of those plans is what makes them so great. Yeah.
Yeah. What's the next one you had on your list?
This one was just reevaluate your investments. I think that's just self-explanatory. Whether you're young and you're trying to take on more risk because you have a longer time horizon, or you're a little bit older where you're looking at maybe rebalancing and kind of changing your overall portfolio so it doesn't have as much wild swings if there's volatility or whatever it may be. It's just all really important, especially when you're making a lot of money or you're just kind of reviewing your plan. Just having those strategies in place so your portfolio can just maintain whatever you're looking at. I think it's another interesting one and another helpful tip, I think.
Yeah, and if you don't have that portfolio already set up, start one. So in addition to the retirement plans with the tax deduction, and I can't believe I missed this one, but also if your income's 100,000, you can do the Roth IRA. Now you don't get a tax deduction today for that, but it comes out tax free. So for that $100,000 athlete, the Roth IRA is definitely a good one to take advantage of, in addition to setting up some kind of retirement plan. I imagine the athletes are self-employed, so setting up the retirement plan is something they can do. They can then also do the Roth IRA. You mentioned the education savings, and you had said reevaluate your investments. I would also say start investing. Now, you want to do it tax efficiently as much as you can, but when I say start investing, what I'm referring to here is just setting up a regular investment account. Mm-hmm. And that will allow you to invest in anything similar like an IRA, but you're able to access that money later. So if you're a younger Olympic athlete and in the future you're ready to buy a house, let's say you don't own a home right now, well, you can't access your 529, your Roth IRA or your 401k or traditional IRA. Now you can access the 401k or Roth for a first-time home purchase, but that's not the ideal use. So just to be clear, you can if you need to. But going back to the point, a regular investment account you can use for anything beyond the home purchase. You buying a car, you're getting married and paying for the wedding. You can use that for anything. There's maximum flexibility there. So I would just add on to your point of reevaluate your investments to make sure you establish an investment account if you don't have one. Just thinking that a lot of these athletes are old, and even for those people that aren't athletes making $100,000 a year, having that regular investment account in addition to those retirement accounts will prove very useful in the future.
Yeah, all good points, Roshan. And I'll just take us on to the next one. This is just a quote pulled from the article, and I thought this was interesting. It says, those who tend to be entrepreneurial and savvy also start businesses, invest in real estate and bars, restaurants, chains, and more. And I'm not really sure how I feel about that, because that can tend to be really risky. And you do hear those stories of these, athletes who make a lot of money, these Olympic athletes that start their own business or open up a restaurant or whatever it may be. And sometimes, the success rates for those tend to not really go in their favor, and that can be harmful sometimes. But there's also another part of this where, investing in like tangible assets sometimes can be really good as well. So I thought that was a really interesting take as well.
Yeah, and that makes me not an athlete, but makes me think of like on the celebrity side, Jimmy Buffett and his restaurants. Now, I haven't been able to find it quick enough, but it says his net worth is around $600 million. I don't know how much of that is due to the restaurants, Margaritaville, but he's got a chain that is all over now, and I just can't find out how much that's added to the net worth. But that's an example of a successful restaurant and being entrepreneurial, that that adds on to my point of the regular investment account. You can take money out of that with no penalties to invest in things like a restaurant, a hotel, and you name it. I saw there was one Olympic athlete. I was looking at some of them that were currently employed. Angel McAutry is it says she's a former ice cream shop owner, and she's a WNBA player that's on Team USA. So some of these can be very successful, and you can use the money you've got from the Olympics to launch another career and looking at these other opportunities. So yeah, I think a lot of I don't know this for sure, but I would imagine a lot of the athletes are entrepreneurial, just because I think you've got to have that kind of spirit to try to focus your career on something that's just so different. Like I imagine an athlete, in high school and middle school, they're leaving. They've got to study on their own because they've got to spend so much more time training. So I feel like that doing things on your own and being entrepreneurial, separating yourself from the pack to do something different, I think probably goes hand in hand with that.
Yeah, it's a completely different field, honestly. And I thought this was also interesting. It says the cost of being an Olympic athlete includes coaches, trainers, medical expenses, equipment, travel, and it's just all of these expenses and all this stuff they have to consider. And an interesting concept when I was kind of prepping for this podcast that kind of came to mind and I was looking into is kind of this definition and this comparison. What would you say the biggest difference is between being somebody that's rich and somebody that's wealthy?
Oh, I would, and I don't know if it's along the same lines. I always used to use the term affluent and wealthy. Mm-hmm. So I'm assuming that that's what you mean by rich. Affluent just means money's coming in and going out. Wealthy means you actually have wealth. You actually have money.
Yeah, exactly. And it was kind of like broken down into different categories, where the affluent is a person that, has a lot of money, where on the wealthy end, wealthy people do know ways of just making more money constantly, kind of that difference between what you have and what you're like constantly like generating as far as like cash flow. Another one is sustainability, where wealthy are, they're always wealthy. They have that kind of constant asset buildup and cash flow. Whereas affluent, it's sometimes for a short duration, where like these Olympic athletes, where they have so much money coming through the door, like constantly, where it's constantly just looking at their expenses and the income coming in, just kind of that back and forth. What's kind of your take on that?
Yeah, it just reminds me. Well, one, I've seen the stat, I'm sure others have, that 70% of professional athletes end up broke. And now the stat's a little skewed because a lot of these professional athletes they're referring to don't make that much. They might have a 1-year career or something. Mm-hmm. But then you've got athletes that have made hundreds of millions of dollars, and then they lose it, right? So that to me is where your affluence, they had a lot of money coming in, mm-hmm. but they weren't wealthy. They weren't able to build wealth. Comes to mind. So I think it fits in really well here. It also reminds me of I met with this was about 4 or 5 years ago. I had a plastic surgeon come into my office, and we started working and doing I had an initial meeting with them. They actually didn't become a client, but this person was making about $1.2 million a year, but was spending at least that much, if not more. Wow. So I was trying to get them to build some savings habits. And at the moment, their plan was they had a multi-million-dollar home they lived in, but their plan was that they would eventually pay off the home and then in retirement sell the home, and that would be their retirement. But they never saved anything. So that to me was the definition of affluent versus wealthy, especially when you've got, that is affluent. You've got a lot of money coming in, but there was no wealth at all.
Yeah, I have it here for like affluent. They're constantly working for money, whereas wealthy, money works for the wealthy person, whether it's in a home, whether it's cash flow, whether it's their investments. Like for wealthy, it's having the money work for them. And in this case of the Olympic athlete, I think that's just a really important concept for them to really hone in on, or people in their peak income year, whatever it may be, just getting to the point where your money is just working for you constantly, other than the other way around. And you mentioned also on my list too is the spending, just monitoring the money that's coming in versus coming out will determine, that wealth building strategy you have in place, I think is really important.
Yeah, it's definitely worth noting that being affluent is not the same as building wealth. And I had to look up the origin, but it says it's from Middle English, and it meant abundant and flowing, which is just a great word to use here, because the money is, if you're not building wealth through saving some of that money coming in and going out, it's just flowing in and out. It's not actually staying with you and being built. Similar to, I mentioned the athlete stat, there's a similar stat for lottery winners, and maybe it's not flowing as much because it comes in at one time, but it definitely tends to flow out, as most lottery winners also end up spending / losing it all.
Now I'm really interested, kind of skeptical with this last part, and you'll probably give me a really good take on this. This is saying to be wealthy, only financially educated people can be wealthy. Does that sound right? What would kind of be your take on that?
Well, I think the key is called financial education, right? Not just overall education. I just make that point because you always hear stories of people like Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates. They didn't finish college. So when you hear education, sometimes people will think going up levels of education, graduate, undergraduate, and so on. But I think I can't imagine being able to build wealth without having some level of financial education. It doesn't have to be formal, but you've got to learn along the way what to do. I actually have a client that I work with now where she is the first and only college graduate in her family. She is the first and only earner of 6 figures or more in her family. And we started working together in her late 40s. She's in her mid 50s now, but at that point, she didn't have anything saved. And it's because all she ever saw was people growing up, was people living paycheck to paycheck. And she needed to learn what to do to not be that. And she realized that that within her family network, at least, there was not anyone there to educate her on it, which is, she was referred to me by another client of mine, but that was our first conversation where she said, I just don't know what to do because I've never experienced something like this. She would end up having some money accumulated in her checking account, and then she'd have to give it to some family member who had some emergency. Wow. Constantly. Yeah. So I've been working with her, and she's done a wonderful job of building her savings. She's on track to retire. But I've also seen a shift in her in terms of her mentality with saving. Being a government employee in the last couple of years, she's dealt with due to budgets. All the government employees being furloughed for a little while Congress got the budget in order, and then with the pandemic. So I've just seen how she's done a great job of saving, and a lot of those decisions were decisions she made on her own after us working together for years and showing her how to save, where to save, that kind of thing. So yeah. I definitely I would have to say I agree with that quote, or the only potential caveat there would be that if you are not financially educated and you want to build your wealth, you bring in an expert that is, and have them help you build your wealth. And you're likely to get some financial education from that expert. So maybe it is almost one and the same, but in your team, someone needs to be financially educated to help you build wealth.
Yeah. I mean, I like how you said that, like have like a team, a group of people, a third party or whatever, just have the conversation getting started as soon as possible too. That's also a big thing about it. And just just planning and always on an annual basis or quarterly or whatever it is, just constantly check that plan just to make sure you're on track. And again, kind of the overall theme in this like episode is just, you know, when you're having this money come into the door, like what are some strategies you can do now? What are some ideas, or what can you do to help yourself in the future, or just whatever it may be? I think is just a really important concept we're touching on.
Yes, I think this is useful for anybody. It really goes down to, sometimes I think it's really basic of just save your money, right? Yeah, it comes down to that. Save what you can, continue to save, no matter how much or how little, keep that going. Mm-hmm. And then you've got we talked about both retirement and education, but after you've started that saving, you've got to take advantage of any tax benefits that are available to you.
Yeah.
And are there to encourage it.
And decision making, like these athletes are faced with some like the toughest decisions, and if they have a lot of money coming to the door, that just adds on, you know, like I feel like 10, 20 more. So just making the right decisions, just doing the research, surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals or smart individuals when it comes to like managing or just anything, whatever you can do to kind of just give yourself a head start and just build up a strong foundation is extremely important. Because again, these athletes, it's not like they're going to be going to the Olympics again sometime in the decade, unless it's like, you know, very common in their sport. Like this is like the moment for them to really just, like I said in the beginning, just strike while the iron's hot. So just making these important decisions at this pivotal moment where this money's coming through the door and they're competing for their country, it just, you know, just adds on that weight and just makes me think like there's just so much going on, and they have to also compete and perform as well. It's just a whole different ball game, honestly, for them.
That was something I had heard about Simone Biles, you know, with her situation and her decided not to compete. She had said something to the effect of she was doing it for everyone else now and not for her.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So I can see where the amount of work, dedication, sacrifice it takes. And then if you're doing it for somebody else, that just seems like a lot to do for someone else. I've got a couple other things I just wanted to mention on here when we're talking about athletes and their money, how they make their money and so on. But when I saw some of these average numbers of, you know, in the U.S., what you get for a gold, and the fact that the overwhelming number of these athletes really aren't making it big or can't make a full career out of it. So I was just wondering what some of these athletes did. And I got a list of some of the athletes. I found some interesting jobs out there. Like there's a marathon runner named Jared Ward, who is a math professor at BYU, Brigham Young University. You've got another interesting one was a Canadian marathon runner, Lainey Marchant, is a criminal defense attorney in the U.S. I wonder why she competed for Canada instead of the U.S. If she works down here, but I don't know enough about her to say that. And the other thing I looked up that I was curious about was the 10 Richest Olympians. Now, this story may be old, but do you have any? Or I'm not even going to ask you that. Do you have any idea? I will tell you, I think there's no way you can guess the number one richest Olympian.
It's not to this day, just in history, the number one like richest person.
I think it's total net worth for of an Olympian. So so their money doesn't necessarily come from the Olympics, but can you guess? I think you can guess one of the names in the top 5 for sure.
Is it Michael Jordan?
No, surprisingly, not Michael Jordan. No,
I came across him when I was looking at the article, but I'm surprised. I saw the Last Dance documentary when he went to the Olympics. That was a cool episode. That was one of my favorite. I got to rewatch that show now that I said that.
Yeah, that is great. They're actually doing one about the Malice at the Palace now too, with that whole brawl that broke out years ago. But I'll give you the number one name. I'd never heard of it before. Ion Tiraik was a Romanian tennis player that he founded a private bank in 1990. His net worth is 1.7 billion. The highest U.S. Olympian, and I think you'll think this is obvious after I tell you, but it's Floyd Mayweather with a $1.2 billion net worth.
Okay, yeah, I remember looking at his name when I was doing the prep last night. That doesn't surprise me. That doesn't surprise me now.
Yeah, and just to round out the top 5, number 2 is Anna Kasprak, who is a horse rider, a Danish horse rider, and then you've got Roger Federer and Serena Williams in the top 5.
So the tennis players really dominate that space. That's interesting.
Yep, 3 of the top 5 are tennis players, but that doesn't go into the number of athletes that we mentioned earlier that end up doing other things and working other jobs, just like everyone else, and they have a more typical trajectory income wise where it tends to go up, and they'll probably have their peak earning years in their 50s.
Yeah, that's really cool. Those are some really interesting stats.
So yeah, I always get curious as to pretty much with anything. That's probably why I do what I do in terms of being in finance. But I remember going to a tour a few years ago of tour of a mansion here in DC. Gosh, I wish I could remember the name right now of the place. And then as we're walking through and they're showing all this stuff they have, I'm thinking, how'd they make all this money to get all this stuff?
Yeah, exactly.
So, Adrian, anything to add for tips if you are making $100,000 a year, or tips if you are an athlete, how athletes are making their money and getting through the Olympics?
I think we got a lot of good ones. I don't have any that come to mind or that I missed. I pretty much went through all mine, but I just wanted to do the kind of, since Erik's not here, do like in his honor, a high impact life episode, because we mentioned at the beginning, the Olympics is kind of something I really enjoyed growing up. And when I went to school, my fraternity, the organization that we supported on campus was the Special Olympics. So that's always been something that I've been really kind of like proud of and really love to enjoy. Just if you're out there, just think about supporting Special Olympics. Sometimes they, raise money to send a child with special needs to the Special Olympics so they can compete, and it's just a lot of fun. I basically set up the fundraiser where like one night out of the year, like we all kind of come together and we watch, and I set up a basketball game, a 5-on-5 basketball game to kind of cheer on kids with special needs that enjoy playing basketball. And it was just so much fun. It's also so awesome to see how competitive they were, and how much fun where they score a basket and everyone's like cheering and clapping and say their name. I think that was one of my great memories, like looking back when I attended university. It was just so awesome. And man, they were really good. Like I tried to recruit one of them to join my basketball team after that. It was just so awesome just to see them out there just competing, having fun, and supporting the Special Olympics. And me, I love sports, and if I can do what I do, like play sports and also have people join and have fun and make memories, it's, it helps me just, progress and just want to do it again. We didn't do it last year because there was a lot going on in the world, but hopefully they can do it again in the future. It was just so much fun.
Yeah. Did you end up, you said you tried to recruit him. It didn't end up joining your team?
No, it just, we just couldn't coordinate. And sometimes you can't like add players when the season's going on. So we weren't able to, but, I mean, they were really good, and they were just like diving for balls, doing layups, just hardcore defense. They were just like, making call outs on the basketball court and everything. It made me want to go in there and start playing with just join the game. Honestly, it was a really fun memory, and it was a really great time. So I'm all for the Special Olympics. I love what they do. Just giving kids an opportunity to perform on a platform and just to compete and represent their hometown or their country, whatever it is. It's really, really great, and just keep up for all the people that are doing a great job.
Yeah, that is definitely a great cause, and you can literally go to their website if you want to make a donation. It's specialolympics.org, and that's a great way to end it up. And Erik, if you make it to this part of the episode, I know you do listen to all of them, but Adrian put that high impact life piece in your honor. And so anyone that's out there listening, looking for a good cause, Special Olympics is definitely a good one out there. I hope you are enjoying the Olympics now. Hopefully Adrian and I will watch some of it. And this has been another episode of the Retirement Lifestyle Show. We'll be back next week. Please like, subscribe, tell your friends, family, give us 5 stars. And thank you for listening.